So the plan today is to go through the system, and I'm going to go through it kind of from uh, the front to back, or I guess back to front more like, in that I'm going to show you the reports and exports of the system, the ways that you can get the data out of the system, and then we'll talk about how that data gets put into the system, the different pieces and modules that make up that data. So I'll share my screen here. And so when you first log into the PEARS system, everyone should have gotten emails that allow them to log in. We'll prompt you to set up a password, and then you can come and log into the site. Then you should see a screen very similar to this. This is kind of the dashboard, and we'll come back to this later on once we have more context for what's contained here. But I want to start with the reports and exports portion. And so we have 2 reports and 3 exports. So the reports are going to be web-based pages that give you data that you can pull numbers from or do different things with, whereas exports will give you a Excel file full of data that you've put into the system, and then it'll spit that back out to you so you can take that with you or do further analysis on that data. So the unit snapshot is a high-level overview. And right now, because there's currently no data in the system for Utah, then I'm going to look at actually what Kansas has, and we can see more of what's going on there. So what this does is it provides some numbers and charts and pieces of data that we can use for other reports or just to get an idea of what's going on. And it's neat because you can filter down to the data set that you want to look at. We can go by reporting period, so I could look at the 2014-2015 reporting period. I can filter by start and end date, so give it a date range, and it'll find the data within that date range. I can look at a given unit as well, so here I could look at a specific county, or maybe I want to see the whole state, and then once I apply those filters, then it'll reload the page with those filters in mind. So for Kansas, there were almost 1,300 program activities logged over the 2014-2015 year. We can see the number of volunteers, sessions, things like that, these total numbers. And then we also can see the demographic breakdown and some of these charts that are interactive, so we can dive into them further and see, for instance, what the breakdown of people that received food assistance or SNAP benefits is by age. And we can also export each of these charts. So the 3 lines here give us a menu where we can either print the chart or we can download it in several different formats that allow us to include it in posters or other media if we wanted to. And this is the demographics of all the program data that's been entered in the system. We also have a heat map of the programs that is by county for state. So again, we're looking at Kansas's site. If we went over and looked at Utah's, we have a map of Utah, and so each state will have their own map, and it'll be color-coded by the number of program activities logged in that county or for that filter criteria. So Wyandotte County in Kansas is right next to Kansas City, so there's a lot of activity going on over there, and we could just kind of look around and see where the hot spots are in the state. And this is also exportable, so we can print or download this chart as well. The favorite quotes section pulls from our success stories module. So this is where educators and users can log data about that's maybe not as qualitative or quantitative as nature, that's not numbers focused, but you have a body of text. Someone wrote a letter or a thank you note, and it's, you know, they talked about the difference that was made in their life. Then the success story piece can capture that, and within that we have the option to specify a favorite quote. This just pulls from the pool of success stories, so you can see some of the favorite quotes, and then you could look further at the different success stories that are being logged there. And then the last piece, this is still very much a work in progress, the impact data. The impact data is meant to be a pre-post comparison of some of the response data to the evaluation instruments that have been logged in the system. And so we can aggregate that across programs and do, again, a pre-post comparison. What we're finding is that this needs more fine-tuning, partially on our end to make it work properly, but also there are, we need to filter out some of the less valid data. So for instance, not everyone enters both a pre and a post response, which can skew data and things like that. So although this is here, you are able to see this, and we do have it to where it can be exported. I would recommend not using this for now, just because it's we're still fine-tuning that piece. But it does give you an idea of the type of data that we can pull together and some of the capabilities the system has for reporting. So that's the unit snapshot. The other report that we have, and I'll go back over to Utah for this one, is the EARS data report. So EARS is for the National SNAP-Ed Office, and they require this reported on an annual basis, but it does give an overview in a different way of what's going on in the system. And we can run this EARS report for a variety of criteria, in that we can say we want to look at the whole state, or we could look at just maybe your county and what's going on locally in your county. And we can also run it for a custom date range. So normally this would be the whole reporting year, October 1st through September 30th. But this could also be run on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, just to get some numerical overview of what's going on. So we specify our filters and then click Run Report, and it'll load this pre-formatted page. Again, there's no data, so there's going to be lots of zeros here right now, but what it does is format it in a similar way as the EARS report for the national office. And it collects information about the direct education that's happening. So that's going to be the program activities in the system. We can look at the demographics, the age and gender, the race and ethnicity are all captured by this system. We can also look at the number of programs being delivered by type of setting. So how many are being delivered in community centers, and maybe this will help show where a new focus needs to be. If no one's doing anything in community centers, maybe that's an opportunity to start doing something there, but it can help and bring that to attention. It also looks at the format that programs are being delivered in. So whether or not they're delivered as a single session program, or whether it's a series that's done, and then the length, the time range for those series. We also collect the educational topic areas of emphasis or intervention topics. So what are people talking about in their programming? Are they talking about physical activity? Or are they talking about fiber-rich food? And what are the top topics, the ones that are being most addressed within that given filter set, that date range and unit? We also collect some information about indirect activities or indirect education. So if you're doing newsletters or posters at the local food bank, or if you have you know, a website or radio PSAs going out, then that can get logged in the system as well and then reported on here. We don't collect anything about social marketing initiatives or social campaigns currently in the system, nor do we currently collect anything about expenditures in the system. So those pieces that are part of the EARS report aren't collected here, but all the other pieces are. So those are reports. Our exports then allow you to export and get data out of the system that's been put into the system. So we have one for the program activities, And this allows you to get an Excel file that has all the overall details of the program activity, the response data, the demographics, all in one single Excel file that can make it easier to share or work with for more analysis. The success story export then allows you to filter out and to get a group of success stories. So again, that's going to be a lot of text per success story, and instead of looking at them one by one, you can export them to Excel, where you could then work with those records further and see what's going on within that. And again, you've got several filter criteria here. And then the template export looks beyond a single program activity and looks to the whole system for all these responses for a given template. So whether or not that's your food sense class participation form, your social media survey, you can export this at a variety of levels, whether that be, it's kind of whatever you have permissions to. So if you only have permissions to see your own data, it'll export that. If you have permissions to see everything in your county, it'll export that data set. And if you have permissions to see everything within the state, then it'll capture all of that information and pull that into Excel, so you could do further analysis on the response data or look at the demographics and program data as well. I'll pause there for questions. I know that we haven't covered how the data gets into the system, so some of these things are still relatively abstract, but does anyone have any questions at this point about the reports or exports? And I'll unmute you guys so you can ask.
This is Margie, and I just wanted to say that this is a wonderful way to collect and combine data so that it can be more impactful. It's just a way to be more powerful in our impacts.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's part of the intent behind the system, is to collect, and we'll see once we get into it that we collect the data in such a way that we can aggregate it and pull it together at different levels, which makes reporting really powerful. And we haven't even scratched the surface on the potential for future reporting in the system. We can do so much, and we're interested in building up the reporting feature set here to include heavier duty analysis, some other one-page overview reports that can be helpful maybe to individual educators as well as the state office, those sorts of things. So I'm really excited about the potential for reporting in this system. Other comments or questions? Okay. We'll move forward, and if you guys have questions, there'll be opportunity later on for more questions. So now let's talk about how the data gets into the system, and that happens through 4 modules. We have instruments, program activities, success stories, and the indirect activities. And we'll start just at the top of the list with instruments. One of the things that the PEARS system can do is it can hold a library of survey instruments. Part of what PEARS really is an online survey system. I know you guys might be familiar with Qualtrics or systems like that, and we're not the same, and we don't do everything that Qualtrics does, but we can have a library of survey instruments that you can choose from, and then build off of that and enter response data. So the way that we do that is we have templates in the system, and so right now there's currently 5 templates and for Utah, and we've added those in. We can add more in as well, and we can choose what template we want to base our instrument off of. So we could say that this is going to be off of the Youth Create My Plate parent survey, and then what it'll do is it'll load in all the questions for that. So we can look at those questions and see what the response type is, what the text and the options are. We have, if there's instructional documents, those will show up. So here we have the Spanish version of this instrument. The PEARS system currently doesn't have multi-language support, but we can attach a PDF of the Spanish version. And we can give it a name for our reference. We can say that this is my new instrument, and then we can create an instrument in the system based off of that template. And so now we can see that this is that list of questions and responses. It's formatted pretty cleanly. We have, if we click print, it'll take us to a nice version, a PDF version actually that the state office gave us, but it's a pretty simple procedure, I guess. And with that, I will mention that currently these templates that are in here for Utah don't have the capability, but the system has the capability to make modifiable instruments. So we can have it to where you can add custom questions or rearrange questions. And depending on the context and what the intended audience is for that template, that can make more or less sense. So we can turn that on or off per template, depending on what the state office wants.
Joel, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are these questions, have they been already pre-approved by the Utah State University IRB so that we can use it for data for
I'm going to defer that question to Kim. So what we've done is any instrumentation that's been sent to us all of it's been sent by the state office. And so we've put it into the system as is. We haven't done anything to it or changed any of the questions. So Kim, do you think you could answer that? Are these approved by the IRB?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
So once we have our instrument in the system, it'll stay there, but we don't collect the response data directly with the instrument. So that way that instrument can be used across multiple programs. If you're using the same set of questions in 5 different programs, it doesn't make sense for you to have to create 5 different instruments. So where we collect that response data is going to be in the program activities module. And what this allows us to do is to provide a context for the program or the instrument responses in a way that makes them more meaningful. So instead of just having somebody somewhere sometime said this on one of the responses, we can say, well, one of the people in this group at this date in this place said this. So when we add a program activity, it'll start by asking for some overall details. So here we can just give it a name for our reference, and we can say that this is my new program activity. The delivery site is just an open text field to help us remember where it was delivered, so I can give the name of the school, so I can say that this was Dr. Seuss Elementary School. I can specify what county it took place in, so I can look at the list there. With some of these lists, or pretty much all the lists in the system, you can start typing and it'll search for you. So if I'm looking for Salt Lake County, I just have to start typing and it'll filter it down. The same thing for the nearest city. This is a list of cities in Utah, and as we start typing, then we can see that it'll filter for us. The delivery people helps us keep track of who the educators were that delivered the actual programming. So one thing that we've come to realize after several years of maintaining and building the system is that sometimes the user who's entering the program activity isn't the one who delivered it. That may be because it's an office professional or a student intern, but and there may be other people who help deliver it as well. So this allows us to track that. So we can say that maybe I delivered it and Kim delivered it. We can add as many people as needed that actually help deliver the program and keep track of that here. But if you, again, have a student intern maybe entering data for you, then it won't automatically add their name to this list as someone having delivered it if they actually didn't deliver it. We can then specify our date range. So if this was a single program, single session, and it took place today, then we would specify the same start and end date. But if it was maybe something that took place over the course of February, a month-long series, then I can specify that. I can enter in any volunteer information I have. So if there had been people that volunteered, I could enter, say, 3 volunteers, and they each helped 2 hours, so that's a total of 6 hours of volunteer effort. And then I can keep track of how many sessions there were. And I can log the program activity before I actually deliver it. So again, we're just at the beginning of February, and so I can say, well, I'm planning on delivering 4 sessions, and they're each going to be 2 hours long, or maybe they're each going to be 1.5 hours long. So I can do 1.5 here, and it'll keep track of that in the system. And then down here at the bottom, this comment box is purely for your reference. It allows you to attach notes to the program activity in a way that's going to travel through the system with the data. So if I were to say that this was a great program because, and then I had more reasons, then that comment is going to travel through the system with this data, so we can come back and not have to keep track of notes elsewhere on sticky notes or in notebooks that are separate from the data. So once I've entered these things, I can click Create. I will mention that anytime a field is bolded and has a red asterisk next to it, that's going to be a required field. So we don't have to specify delivery people or volunteer information or a comment, but the other fields are required in the system. So we need to make sure that those are entered. Otherwise, the form, this page won't let us save that data because it's not valid, it's not complete. So once we've created our program activity, then it takes us to this program activity overview screen. And this is where we start to add in the additional context data and the response data that's going to make this program activity meaningful. So you can see that we have the details we just entered right here, and then we have this progress meter over here to the right, and that's going to help us track through the system what we have yet to do to get a complete data set, to get a full picture of this program activity. And you can do these in just about any order, but I'm going to walk through them as they're listed here. So we'll do the SnapEd custom data next, and this is just additional details for SnapEd that we can say, you know, we can specify what the priority indicators are. So with that, let me mention what each of these fields is. The priority indicators is pulled from the Western Region Framework document, the SnapEd Framework document, and there's 7 indicators that the whole region has decided, the Mountain Plains SnapEd region has decided to focus on together. And so that's this list. That's what makes up this list currently. And what we'll do is once the new national SnapEd plan is released, the framework is released here soon, we'll update these indicators and update the system to match that national plan. But right now we can say that if we're focused on my plate behaviors and physical activity behaviors, I can code our program activity against that data. The target audiences, this is something that originated in Kansas, and it's just, the idea is that you want to be able to keep track of who you're intending your audience to be. So if you're going into a classroom and it's intended for 3rd through 5th grade, then the reality is you may have parents in the classroom that are there as well, and so you want to track who you were intending the audience to be, regardless of who showed up. That we can see who showed up by the demographic information we're going to collect later, but the target audience helps us track that initial intent. The setting type, this is pulled from the EARS report. It's just a list of those different types of settings, and so we could say that this was done in a public school. The primary curriculum, this is a list of curriculum handed to us by the Utah State Office. So we do have the option of specifying an other curriculum if one of these 3 doesn't meet our needs. But if we were doing a create my plate curriculum, we could log that here, as well as the objectives. Then are several objectives that have been given to us, and so we can say that this was to improve overall dietary quality as well as increase participation in physical activity, for instance. And then the intervention topics is also pulled from the EARS report. So here we can say that we were really dealing with my plate and physical activity, and maybe we also did some food safety things. So we can code all of this data, and what this will allow us to do is, again, we can build reports based off of these fields. So we could say, pull a list. We don't have these reports ready-made, but what we'll be able to do is build a list of all the program activities and collect all the data for an intended audience of 3rd through 5th grades, or everything that was done in a public school, those sorts of things. So coding this additional data gives us so many possibilities for reporting, for meaningful reporting at both a educator level or a county level, as well as a state or even regional level. Since all these states in the Mountain Plains region are going to be coding their data in a similar fashion to this against these fields, then that enables us to start doing some regional-wide reports that are going to be really neat and show that as a region, the Mountain Plains region is doing a lot of cool things, and that'll be impactful, or again, show some of that impact. So now we've saved our custom data. We can see that here. If we needed to go back and update that, we could click Edit. The same thing for our overall details. If we need to go back and update, maybe we realize that we forgot to count somebody as a delivery person, clicking Edit will take us back and we can edit those details. So next on the list, we can see that our progress bar is moving along. Next is going to be the demographic section. And the demographic section just is somewhat self-explanatory. We can collect the number of total participants. So if we had, 15 kids in the classroom and 7 of them were male, 8 were female, they're all going to be between 5 and 17 years of age. And then we can specify additional information about if, the percentage of them that are receiving SNAP benefits. So maybe out of the 15, 10 of those are receiving SNAP benefits, those sorts of details. We can also record their race, and the way that race is collected, race and ethnicity, we have a section for those that only reported one race and another section for those who reported multiple races, because it gets counted differently. So the individuals reporting one race are pretty straightforward. So let's say we had 10 non-Hispanic white and maybe 3 non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaskan Natives. And then we had 2 other individuals who reported multiple races. The way that we're going to count that over on this right-hand section is going to be 1 time per race per person. So if there was a participant who identified as both Asian and Black or African American, we would add 1 to these boxes for that participant. So that's capturing that one participant. And maybe the other participant identified as American Indian and white, then we would add 1 each to each of those boxes. So when we click create, what the form is going to do is it's going to check the math, and it's going to make sure that the male and female add up to the total participants, that the age, the total of the age adds up to the total participants. And then when it comes to race and ethnicity, what it's going to do is take the sum of each of these total columns and compare it to total participants. And it's going to say that the sum of each of these total columns has to be greater than or equal to the number of total participants. So here we have 13, and then here we have another 4. So 17 is greater than 15, so it'll allow us to submit that. And that just allows us to track and keep track of how the multiple races in a better way. So if we had less than, so if we hadn't entered the individuals with multiple races, or if our math didn't add up, then you would get some validation errors, and it's going to the forms will check and make sure that you're entering valid and complete data as you go. Another feature that we do have with demographics is the auto-calculate functionality. And what this button can do is it'll look at the instrument responses. We haven't entered any instrument responses for this program activity yet, but if we had, it would look at those responses and see if there's any demographic data specified in those. So if on an instrument you had asked questions about gender or age or race or ethnicity, then it can scrape those responses and collect that and pre-fill this form with as much data as it can find. So that may not be the complete data set, but it may give you a head start, especially for larger groups. If you're working with a group of 25 or 30, instead of manually having to count and keep track of the demographics by hand, you can just enter the instrument responses and then come back and do demographics and use the auto-calculate feature to kind of get a jump start on that. So we can then save this information, and again, it'll show up here. We can go back and edit and update it if we need to. And now we're at 60% on our progress bar. We're ready for instruments. So this is where we can attach the instruments that we've made earlier to a program. And I can say, I want to attach this or add this to the program. There's that new instrument we created earlier. I can specify whether it was delivered as a pre or a post or a follow-up or retrospective. So if this was something that was done before the programming, after the programming, that's pre and post. Follow-up is going to be done 3 to 6 months later than the end of the programming. And then the retrospective is done after the programming, but it asks participants to reflect on both before and after. So it says before the programming, how did you feel? After, how do you feel now? Those sorts of questions. So let's say that this is a pre-instrument. We'll specify when we delivered it. Since it's during the month of February, I'll say, well, I'm doing these on Wednesday, so it was delivered on Wednesday the 3rd. I can tweak the name for my reference if I need to. And then this aggregate responses, I'm going to come back to in a minute and explain. But for now, we'll act like we're going to enter individual responses or one response per participant. So if I click Add Instrument and then come down here, I can see that it's attached now. We don't have any records in there. To add records or responses, then we click this Enter Response Data button. And what that's going to bring up is a simple web form that we can go through and fill out and for each response that we have. And not all of this information is required, or really none of it is required because we realize that participants may not answer every question. So one person may answer questions 1, 2, and 3, and they may not answer anything else, but we can still log that response. And then and so now we've added a response successfully, and then we can also add more responses, and we can just keep going through until we've entered those responses. Or we can go back and view past responses by the navigation controls that are down here at the bottom of the page. So we could update this if we needed to say, oh, they actually did enter question 25 as well. I can update that, and that saves that. And I can create a new response, and so on and so forth. So, so that's how we would enter individual responses. I will mention with this page, one of the features that we have on our list and we're hoping to do in the near future is to make this a online survey in the true sense. So we would have a link to this page that you could send to participants and they could enter their own responses. Currently, that's still in the feature stage. We don't have that available yet, but that is something we're looking at doing and hoping to do later on. So that way you as the educators and the office professionals and you folks don't have to go through and enter all the responses yourselves. Now I mentioned that we have the ability to collect aggregate responses as well. And so to do that, if we had added, let's say we're adding this instrument again, except this time it's a post instrument. We're doing this at the end of the programming. So let's say it's, or maybe we do it afterwards on Friday. and I check this box that says I'm going to aggregate responses instead of enter them individually. Now when I add that and go to enter response data, then instead of giving me a single form for each response, it's going to give me a box where I can plug in the number of responses for each option. So if 5 people said that the programming made no difference in their intake of fruits and vegetables, and then 10 people said it made a significant difference, we'll just enter our counts of those sorts of things as opposed to each individual response. And then we can add that once we've got that data completed. So one of the nuances to that is that when you enter aggregate responses, you're going to lose some of the level of detail, obviously. So you can't see as much correlation later on in the system, because you don't see that this person, people who answered, this way to question 1 answered this way to question 2. You lose that level of detail and just get to see general trends and counts. So it still can be helpful if you're dealing with a large group, or if you're doing a hand-raising activity where you aren't able to track individuals. But if you have the individual response data, it is going to show a better impact later on in the system. So let's say that we've entered all the responses we needed to. We can mark our instrument section as complete. And what that lets the system know is that that's done. And now we're at 80%. The only thing left to do on our progress meter is to mark the program activity as completed. And that's this button up here at the top. And what this is going to do is it's going to now include, the system will include this program activity in reports once it's marked as completed. So this is asking, hey, are you ready? Have you verified this data to make sure that it's entered correctly? Have you got all your data? If so, click yes. And so now we can see these edit buttons are disabled, and we get this little completed flag here. And so now when someone runs a report, this data will get included in their report. Whereas while it's incomplete, it doesn't get included in that report, as to not skew the results with a partial data set. We can, if we need to, go back and mark the program activity as incomplete. So let's say that I forgot I did need to add somebody as a delivery person. I can mark it as incomplete, and I'll say, okay, it's not going to be included in reports now. And so then we well, I don't know why that button isn't working. I'll make a note that we'll fix that. So we could go back and mark it as incomplete, and then tweak that response and say, or if we wanted to enter more instrument responses or add a delivery person, we can go back and edit that later on.
Can you do that multiple times?
Yes. Yes, that's a good question. So what the system does is it kind of treats this like a flag, to where you're able to go back and forth, and you can mark it as complete and incomplete as many times as you need to. The idea is, again, that if it's complete, you're not just saving the data, but that's ready to be included in reports. So if you forgot several things and ended up doing it 3 or 4 times, the system isn't going to, the system will allow you to do that. But hopefully you don't need to do that too often, because you shouldn't be marking it as complete if you don't have all the data. Oh, there it went. Just took a little bit to load. And once it is complete, then hopefully it's ready for reports. I'll pause there. Are there other questions about instruments or program activities? We'll cover success stories and indirect activities in a moment, but anything about the success stories or program activities?
I'm wondering if the state office is going to talk to us specifically about how they want us to use this amazing resource you're showing us.
This is Kim. We will be doing what used to be the IVC, but a Zoom meeting that has our training on it for those who missed this and specific ways maybe we want to use it or have it done.
Are you
Great,
guys
thank you.
recording? Are you guys recording this Zoom presentation so people can listen to it later as well?
Yes, we are. This one will be recorded. I'll send this link to Kim after we're done, and she can distribute that. So,
Great.
and we will be having, I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but we will have additional opportunities for support and questions and training beyond just this one webinar. So we'll cover that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure that as we get using it, we'll have more questions. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to help. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on, and if you guys think of other questions, then we'll, again, have time at the end for any lingering questions. So the success stories and indirect activities data modules are relatively simple as compared to the program activities and instruments piece. And so when we add a success story, then it's going to ask us for several things. And it's essentially what the key part of it is the body of text. So this is a story, right? So you want to talk about a participant who made major life changes, and they're really successful in terms of how the educational programming impacted their lives, and you can record that here. You can, if you need to, link that to a specific program. You don't have to, but say if they were a participant in the My New Program Activity program, we can do that. We can specify our unit again and give it a title. So let's say that's My New Success Story. And then I can copy and paste or type in text manually and format it even. So we do have some basic formatting tools here as well if you needed to bold or italicize things or insert links. And you can copy and paste from Word or from another website in here, and it should work. And then we can also specify this favorite quote. We saw that earlier on the unit snapshot. So here we can come back and say, you know, that the participant said something profound that was worth recording. And so we can record that favorite quote here. The system will also ask you to give a little bit of background. So just to make sure that we have the context for the success story, was this done in a programming setting, or was this maybe they didn't attend the program, but they called and said, you know, I heard one of your radio public service announcements, and it just really struck me, and I wanted to let you know that it made a difference in my life. And so we can give that background here. And then here at the bottom, we can code it against a list of keywords. Now, this list of keywords is going to be broader than just SnapEd. Kansas's extension units, not just their SnapEd, but their extension, does use this system as well. And so this list of keywords covers all of that. And so we can say that maybe we were dealing, you know, this has to do with healthy eating, but it probably, you know, isn't going to have anything to do with animal health, right? So we don't have to code against those things. But you should be able to find keywords that you can use to code against that, and that'll make it easier for someone to look up these success stories later, and we'll see that that can also build in some cool reporting features. It then asks for the focus area, socio-ecological framework, level, and the approach that you use. So if, again, you're focused on food choices here and maybe food safety, then you can check those boxes. The socio-ecological framework, right now what we're finding is that most of the data in the system is at the individual or family level, but there might be other levels that you're addressing or that this success story applies to. And then the approach, whether this was done on an individual or group-based nutrition education, so you went into a community center and did a presentation, did some education for an hour and a half, and that's what this was, or maybe it was a multi-level intervention or even a community or public health approach. So we can check those things, and then we have the ability to attach files to the success story. So if you have pictures, scanned newspaper clippings, other files that make sense to include with the success story, you can upload those to the system, and they'll travel, again, with the data throughout the system. So that way, when the state office, when Kim and Heidi and Paul are looking to collect some of these success stories, get some of that human element for their reports, then they can also not just get the text, but if you have pictures, they can find those things. Or if they're scanned newspaper articles, they can see those things here, and you can attach those files. So once we've entered our information, then we can create this, and it'll be saved in the system. We can go back and edit it if we need to, and it'll show up in our list of success stories. One of the other things that we can do with success stories is create a word cloud. And to do that, I'm going to swap back over to Candace's system because we've got more data in there currently. And so if I go over to success stories, and let me open up my filters a little bit. So I've got a lot of success stories that have been logged in the system here. And I can create a word cloud, or a Wordle, is another way that it's known, of all the keywords that have been logged for those success stories. So here we can see, based off of the size of the word, you know, the kind of how many times it's referenced and what's being used. And so I can update my filter. If I wanted to look at a specific reporting period, I could do that, and it will reload. I can download this to include on a poster or other graphics if I need to. So it's kind of neat how this this word cloud will work, and can give you a way to report out on, summarize the success stories that are in the system. Okay, and then we'll cover indirect activities. Indirect activities, the program activities are meant to be your direct education, and then the indirect activities are things like newsletters, PSAs, community health fairs, or if you had billboards available, those sorts of things can be logged here and will then get included in the EARS report. So if we did monthly newsletter, and this was for Davis County, and so this was for the month of February, we can log our date range and say that we sent out, we estimate that we reached, you know, 1,000 people through our newsletters or articles, and then we are asked to specify how we got to that estimate. So that's probably, you know, we can say other because we know that we sent out 1,000 newsletters that month. So we can specify that, and we can show what types of materials we used for that activity. So if that's part of, you know, maybe we both sent out newsletters and we did email materials. So we distribute that newsletter via an email. We can do that and save that data, and that will get saved in the system and then again included later on in the EARS report. And that's, again, both success stories and indirect activities are pretty simple. So I don't have much more to say about those. Does anyone have any questions about either of those, either success stories or indirect activities?
If there's something.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Margie. So on your keywords list that is all inclusive of many programs, and only some of them or a few of them will be pertinent to the food sense, the SNAP Ed. Is there, and it might not be as familiar with NEAs as it might be to faculty to sift those out. Would it be possible to ask for someone to go through that from the state office and just provide a short list of those pertinent keywords that NEAs might be looking for. So it would be just a little bit easier. I know that you can't put that into the program, but you know, you could send a brief little help list.
You know, that's a good idea, and we could actually build that into the system. So on our end, I'll make a note to talk with our development team and our office evaluator about making this list specific to the program area that's being used. So if it's just, you know, if it's Kansas, then it'll show the whole list. But maybe if it's just Utah, then it just narrows it down to what's more relevant to again those food sense or SNAP ad type keywords. So we'll work on trying to narrow that down to make it so it's a predefined list that all makes sense.
What you got? What you got?
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Mariana. I just want to know, is this going to take the place of Qualtrics so we won't have to be filling out Qualtrics? And when is all of this going to start taking place?
That's an excellent question. It will take the place of Qualtrics, and we're hoping that towards the beginning of March, kind of our hope is that the iPads will be up and going by the time that your supervisors end up coming up for their annual conference, so that we can just distribute them then.
Okay.
So towards the beginning of March.
Thank you.
Other questions about success stories, indirect activities?
Yeah, I have a question about indirect activities.
Sure.
Currently, we report on a monthly basis all activities. So in this system, we will be breaking out each individual activity for that specific reporting period, rather than reporting a lump what we did the entire month.
Yeah, our hope is that after you complete an activity that day, after you teach a class that day, after you participate in, say, a fair that day, that you would just come home or right there at the site, that you would just go ahead and enter it into the iPad. So that pretty much on a daily basis, we could go in and say, as of March 15th, this is what's happened in this county or in the state of Utah. So that any given day, everything would be up to date.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and with that, I will mention one of the features, the benefits of using a system like PEARS is that it is, you can capture that live data, that live element. It is also mobile friendly, so Kim has mentioned iPads a couple of times. This will display well on an iPad or even a phone. Again, depending on what you're doing, you may or may not want to, you know, obviously enter a lot of instrument response data on your phone, but you could do that via an iPad, or obviously it works with regular computers as well.
And Joel, if I might just mention too, that's one of the reasons there's been a delay with the iPads, is we're really working to get this AirWatch program on. That's our security provider. And that's what makes it so ideal to enter it on the iPads, is it'll have this high security program on it so that the data is protected. Yeah,
definitely. And it'll be protected on our end as well. I know that's been a question before, but our servers and the way that we handle the data is all very secure. I'll cover a few more features and functionalities of the site, and then we'll have kind of any lingering questions we'll answer then. So one of the things you may have noticed is up at the top, this series of links, and what this is a breadcrumb trail that allows you to track where you are in the system. So as we go throughout the system, then and get deeper into something, then it'll show us and give us links back to the different levels. So right now we're updating our SNAP Ed custom data. we can jump back to that program activity level or jump back to the whole list of program activities at any given time. So that way we see kind of how we got here. So it's through evaluation program activities, our specific program activity, and then we're updating that right now. So that's one of the things that we have. On the list of program activities, we also have some filters, and this is going to be pretty much anywhere there's a list of things, we have a filter and maybe even a search box that you can use to narrow down and see different things. So we can look at a given reporting period, that start and end date. For the program activities, we can either filter by the user that entered it, or I could look at delivery people. So if I wanted to see everything that Kim has delivered, then we can do that, or by unit and filter out those different things. So it allows us to, again, get quickly to the data that we need, instead of, especially if you guys are doing a lot and as time goes on, your list is going to get longer and longer. You don't want to have to scroll through 7 pages of lists to get to what you need. You can use the filters to get there quicker. Also on our dashboard here on the home page, you'll see that there's a little bit more data here. What the dashboard is meant to do is try and bring your attention to and give you some quick links to continue working. So here at the top, we want to draw your attention to unfinished or incomplete program activities. And that's just to let you know that these things aren't getting included in reports. And so there's something missing, even if it's just that completed flag and you have a link directly to that program activity so you can mark it as completed. We also have a link to the instruments in incomplete program activities, where we can go through and say, oh, I really do need to enter more responses here, and it gives us a direct link to start adding those responses. Over here on the right, we have recent activity, and this is going to provide those links as well. And the reason that can be helpful is if you are entering data and you pause for lunch, you go out to lunch and you come back, and maybe your computer went to sleep and you wake it up, then you have links right to what you were dealing with recently as well. So hopefully that can be, again, helpful just to help navigate that system and get through things quickly and easily. One of the other things that we mentioned, or I said I would talk more about, is the support in the site. And so my role on the team is the support team lead. I'm here to oversee and make sure that you guys get the training and the support you need to use the system well. You guys get your questions answered, and that if you have issues, that those get reported and taken care of quickly. And so to do that, we start with the support that's built into the site. We have these little links, circles with question marks throughout the site, that ask if you need help with custom data or with program activities. And clicking on one of these will take you over to our support page, which has a list of articles that specify how to do different things, or maybe frequently asked questions sometimes. And there's also this main support page link up here, and it's going to take you to essentially the same place, but this is just our support homepage, where it has all the different articles listed here, frequently asked questions and other things. And it also has a search bar, so you can start searching for what you need and say, oh, I really need to know more about success stories. You start typing that, and oh, well, it's suggesting several things, and maybe I want to know what a word cloud is. I can go and see that this is what a word cloud is, and then we have that defined here in our support documentation. So hopefully that'll help answer some of your questions. If you forget how to do something, I realize, especially if you guys aren't going to be heavily using the system until the beginning of March, that this training, you probably will forget at least a few things, if not a lot of things by then. And so this support documentation can help with that. Beyond the support that's built into the site, we also have a dedicated support email and a support phone line that can help. And that's over here on the left. I'll zoom in a little bit, and you guys can write that down. The email is just pairs@oeie.ksu.edu, and the phone number is 785-532-5138. We are, our hours are business hours Central Time, that is. So that's going to be 8 to 5 Central Time, or it'll be 7 to 4 Mountain Standard Time. And so you're welcome to email us or call us with any questions you have. If you need someone to walk you through the system, we have a team ready to answer the phones and do that. If you have a bug and need it reported, you can do that here. We're here to help, and we want to make sure that all your questions get answered and that you have a good experience with the site, that we help with that. So don't hesitate to call us or email us with questions or feedback. Maybe you think of a feature that could be really helpful and you want to let us know. We definitely appreciate hearing those things and want to hear back from you there. So don't be afraid to reach out to us at any point in time and ask questions or give us feedback. The only other thing I think I need to mention is I briefly mentioned permissions earlier, and we have essentially 4 kinds of permissions, I'll say. And so one of those is going to be permissions that you have control over, and that's if you go to My Account and then the Permissions tab, you can give other users permissions to edit your data, to view and edit your data. So if you had a student intern that's going to be entering a lot of the responses for you, or you're collaborating a lot with someone else in your county and you want to be able to help each other out and enter data, then you can grant people access to edit your data just by searching for them and then saving. And so now Kim would have access to edit Heidi's account, her data in the system. And then to remove that is just to click the X and click Save again, and now that person doesn't have those permissions anymore. So that's kind of one of our basic level of permissions that you guys have control over. There are also some permissions that we hope to give the state control over, but it's not ready quite yet. And that's the unit level or county level permissions and statewide permissions. So we have the capability to grant supervisors or other people that are supposed to have those permissions to see, not edit, but see all the data in a county or several counties. And the same thing for the state. We can grant Kim and Heidi and Paul will all have permissions to see everything that's been entered for the whole state of Utah. And then we can aggregate those permissions or pull those together. Those are currently, again, taken care of on our end. So if you feel like you're supposed to have permissions to see everything in your county, then have your county supervisor or your supervisor reach out to us, let us know that you're supposed to have those permissions, and we can grant those very quickly. The last level of permissions is going to be relies on the delivery people for program activities. So when you specify somebody as a delivery person, regardless of other permissions in the system, they will have the ability to view, not edit, but view this program activity. So since Heidi has specified myself and Kim as delivery people, regardless of any other permissions we have, we can come in and view and verify that this is valid data and refer to it. So that way, when you're collaborating, when you're working with other educators, then that they have access to that data. And so it doesn't need to be entered one time per person. It can be entered, one person can enter that whole program activity and then just include the other people as delivery people, and they'll be able to see and refer to that data as well. Okay, that's all I have planned to say. So are there any other questions that folks have? I'll unmute and we can try and get any lingering questions, anything that people want me to cover again that didn't make sense. Just let me know and I'm happy to answer those questions. Or again, Kim's on the call, so if there's questions for Kim, she's here as well.
Kim,
Yes.
this is Laura Streeter in Salt Lake County.
Hi, Laura.
So what we're going to be calling program activities is what we probably just called classes before. Is that correct?
Correct.
So what if we have ongoing things? Like, for example, we've been going, because I know there was a section where he put in the number of sessions that particular program activity had. But for example, we've been going to LDS Humanitarian Center for going on 5 years now.
Right.
We go practically twice a month. And I mean, there's no end date in sight for that facility. How would we log that? Is there an ongoing option for a number of sessions for program activities?
Probably just leave the end date blank.
Well, no, because we have, see how he went to update program activity, and down here at the bottom where it says sessions, and there's a numerical value. There is no numerical value for our refugee classes for LDS Humanitarian Center.
So, Laura, are they part of a series, or are they single classes that you teach every time?
So what we do is we have a create theme dedicated for the month. So for example, for our county, February is quick bread. So we went yesterday, and we will go again today, and we demonstrated a simple applesauce oatmeal muffin, and then we'll go again in 2 weeks, and we'll demonstrate a new quick bread. And then I believe March for us, I believe, is create a pizza, and we'll teach them how to make homemade pizza dough, and then we'll probably show them later on in the month something else they can do with that pizza dough. And since the refugees kind of rotate in and out of the humanitarian center, by the time we get around to February of 2017 and we are back to quick breads again, it won't be the same refugees, because the ones that we taught this month will most likely have cycled out of the program, and it just kind of goes on in perpetuity like that.
Okay, so it sounds to me like what I would do then is for the program activity date range, I would do it for the month. And then if you're teaching 2 sessions that month, I would just mark the 2 sessions.
Okay.
So say you're doing quick breads in February, and you know that you're teaching 2 weeks, I would do it as it shows, like 02/01/16, 02/29/16, and then mark 2 for the number of sessions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
I love it when it makes sense.
Always helpful.
Yes, yes. Sometimes I don't, so I'm really glad when it does.
Oh, and Kim, I have one other question.
Okay.
So, for example, let's pretend Caitlin Waters and I had our iPads already yesterday at LDS Humanitarian Center.
Which would have been wonderful, by the way, but yes.
So, as the way the program is set up now, Caitlin and I would have each then gone back to the office and logged on and gone to the staff menu and done an NEA class record, and we each would have done that, and I would have listed my name and other NEA as Caitlin Waters, and then she would have done one and listed her name. If we had had our iPad yesterday, could one of us just say, hey, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do our program activity, and then what do we call the...
This is an excellent question, Laura. And
then, so one of us could just put in that Caitlin and I were the delivery people, and I could fill out the form and say, hey, Caitlin, you don't need to worry about logging on because I did it for both of us. Laura Streeter and Caitlin Waters were the delivery people, one form, and we're done.
Yes, and how I would do that is because of keeping track of hours, I would try to do it in an equitable way. So say you know that this month you're not teaching as much as Caitlin is, then I would have you do the form. Does that make sense too? So that the hours become more equitable?
Okay. So you're going to use this. So the goal in the past has always kind of been, if you're working 20 hours a week, you want to have at least 4 to 5 NEA class records, which indicates 4 to 5 activities for the week, which justifies your hours. So if Caitlin and I worked together a lot this month and she sent in all the forms on this new program, then it would be like, wow, Laura has all these hours, but she's not. I mean, you could see that I'm one of the delivery people.
Right, right. So
it
you'll
wouldn't be assigned. It wouldn't be assigned to me.
No, it will. It will show you as teaching the class the same as it did before. I'm just saying that as far as hours go, and you're counting your work hours.
Okay.
Because I don't really correlate that, and we haven't been doing that. I'm just saying as far as workload goes, if Caitlin was teaching several other classes too, then you might want to be the one filling out the form so that it evens the workload out. But
Okay.
it will show that both of you did the work.
Okay. And is that just because this takes a little bit more time and effort than the Qualtrics, and this is just going to take a little more time to fill out, and so?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, correct. And we know that. We know that we're putting a little more work on the NEAs. We realize that.
Yeah, this is a lot more extensive than an NEA class record.
It is. Although it might make up time in the Qualtrics part, but we're aware of that, and we'll work on, as we go and use it and learn it better, we'll work on trying to streamline as much as we can too. So, and I know that Joel and his team, they're aware of that too, and we're trying. What should I say? We're pioneers. We're the forefront. We're forging the way. We're amazing. What can I say? So.
Yeah.
I have another quick question, follow up to Laura's question.
Sure.
This is Penny.
Hi, Penny.
Okay, with the refugee class, we have 6 different literacy levels. And so say we're doing about 12 sessions in a month.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing one class every 2 weeks for each of them. So in the number of sessions, do we put down 6 sessions and lump all those different literacy levels into that one program?
So when you're teaching,
so I get recorded.
When you're teaching the different literacy levels, are you teaching it as one class, or are you teaching it as separate classes?
Each literacy level gets its own class. So we will teach 6 different times each week that we go, for a total of 12 during the month.
Oh, okay. And so up until now, we've been lumping it like 100 people on that day, right?
Correct.
I don't see any reason why we couldn't still do that.
Okay. I just wasn't sure what level of, how closely you wanted that broken down.
Technical? Yeah. Up until now, we haven't been separating it, so I wouldn't separate it.
Okay.
Yeah, Kim, so what Penny's saying is we don't, it's not 150 people all in one day. For example, there were 2 back-to-back classes taught on Wednesday, so there were approximately between 40 and 50 people taught on Wednesday. We went Thursday and we did back-to-back classes, and there were approximately 40 to 50 people taught on Thursday, and then we'll go again today,
right,
morning and afternoon, and then there'll be another 40 to 50.
Right, and in the past, how we've always done that, at least from my end, is if it's on a different day, it's a different class. So I would treat it as a different session.
Okay, so Wednesday would be a session, Thursday would be a session, and then could we break Friday up into 2, since we go, well, I guess it's all the same day.
So let's go back to, it has to do with the delivery people. So if Penny is delivering on Tuesday and you're delivering on Wednesday, then it's a whole separate thing.
Okay.
Even though we're doing 2 classes that day.
Yeah, you don't want to put all your delivery people for the whole month.
No.
And no, you want to separate that into, but if you're teaching back to back and it's at the LDS Humanitarian Center and it's the same class, then you could combine that into a session.
Okay. So for example, our Friday where we go in the morning and it's 2 different educators in the morning, and then we go back in the afternoon and it's 2 different educators in the afternoon, those would want to be definitely split up into 2 different
Definitely.
activities because the delivery people will be different.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
I suspect because Salt Lake is such a large county, we have so many NEAs, we might have to do some fine tuning and tweaking. Probably not on this meeting, but
Right. It will take a little more understanding for a larger county, for sure. And I apologize, but I have to go. I have another meeting. And so, so I will be leaving you all. If you have any more questions, please email me, and I'm so happy to answer them.
Thank you.
The limited knowledge and experience I have.
Do you know when our statewide thing will be to explain this specifics for us?
I'm hoping the IVC in, well, what used to be the IVC in February. And if not, we'll have a special time. We'll create a special time. But we're hoping to roll it out that first week in March.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Are there any other questions that I can answer now that Kim's going to be leaving? I can't answer any maybe Utah specific questions, but any questions about the system?
Hey, Joel, this is Lucky. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in the meantime, can we just go in and you know, put some information in here and not save it, not create, hit the create and not save, just to kind of learn to navigate around in the different areas?
Sure. You're welcome to get in the system and start playing around with it. I will say that, yeah, you either don't want to actually save the data and create it, or you can delete things after you've created them. Just if you're playing around, you're entering a success story and you save it, then you can go back and delete it. But you're welcome, if you have your account set up, you're welcome to get in and start using the system. I think, and this is tying in with some of what Kim said, it's going to take a while to get used to using the system, and to, I mean, once you actually start using it, then you'll probably have more questions. You'll understand some of what I've been saying better because you're experiencing it. And likewise, as you do that, then we expect to learn from you and learn a little bit about your workflow and how we can potentially incorporate some of that into the site. So definitely let us know once you get in there and start playing around, start using the system, how it's going, what works, what doesn't, that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will also have, so I know Kim is going to set aside some time for a state-specific training. Our office is also going to provide additional training down the road. We hope to do some on-site training with each state at some point. So depending on when and where, but hopefully coming and doing more specific on-site training similar to this, but more in depth and answering more questions. And probably here in March, at some point, we're going to start having weekly or maybe every other week Q&A sessions online. So we'll send out a set of Zoom links to all the states that are in the system, and then we'll make those available, and then people can log on and ask our support team questions as you guys start to use it and realize more of what's going on. So we definitely want to make sure that you don't have to figure everything out on your own. I mean, I think that the system is quite user-friendly and intuitive compared to other systems I've seen. So hopefully you are able to figure out a lot of it with this training. But if you do have questions, we want to make sure those get answered. So we'll provide additional training and opportunities for questions down the road. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thanks for your questions. They were really good questions, and for your the time that you spent this morning to learn the system. Hopefully, as you get into it, you have a good experience. And if you do or if you don't, let us know, and we'll be happy to work with you more. So I hope you all have an excellent Friday and a good weekend.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.